AC.care has 260 odd staff, and we work with many people from many communities across country South Australia through a variety of different programs. And about 1 in 3 of those people are Aboriginal people. So a lot of our work is with Aboriginal people and communities. And we know as an organisation we've still got a lot to learn. And that's why our board made a decision and agreed to meet some Aboriginal people from different backgrounds, but also Auntie Gwen, who's spent many years in working with Aboriginal communities. We want to learn and listen so that as we meet and make decisions, we can have your voices in our ears guiding us to make wise decisions as we support and work with Aboriginal people.
My name's Shakirra, and I guess I'm just lucky to be here, sort of thing. And it's a privilege to be here.
We're privileged to have you here.
Absolutely. My name's Ray. Been a foster carer now for going on, I think it's about 4 years now. Started off as just child-specific care. When a couple of kids were struggling out of school, and my son come home and said, "Hey Dad, these guys got nowhere to stay," and my best friends. So that's what sort of started us from the caring side of things. I was a foster kid growing up as a kid too, so I guess giving back is one of the big things for me. Without foster care and being placed in a house of, I was placed in a lady named Bronwyn Buckskin's house, which was an Aboriginal lady, which was amazing. So to be placed in that with an Aboriginal family sort of worked out the best for me. So, I've done a variety of things, played a lot of footy, played professional football over in Sydney for 4.5 years for the Sydney Swans, if anyone knows AFL footy. Played over there for 4 years, come back, played a lot of league footy down at South Adelaide. Now I work out at LTW, for Aboriginal Sobriety Group, and I'm an assistant manager and a coordinator out there for the rehabilitation centre we got out there for Aboriginal people trying to get off of drugs and alcohol.
Oh dear, it's hard to know where to start, because it's certainly been a journey, which for me started off as a Victorian, which I don't really identify with these days, because that was a very small portion of my life. I hitched up a 4-wheel drive in a caravan, and I drove from Geelong in Victoria to Katherine, the first time I'd ever towed a caravan. Had no mishaps, so I was very lucky. I was nursing back in those days, but something inside of me told me I need to know about Aboriginal culture. I just had this thing, I didn't know why, but I really wanted to know. So when I went to Katherine and was nursing at the Katherine Hospital, every poor Aboriginal person that came into hospital caught me, asking questions, trying to find out what I should do and what I shouldn't do, and made some really good friends up there, which is great. But then most of the people I got to know there moved back out bush from town, and I'd lose track of them. After 3 years I went to Cooper and there met and got to know people more, including Uncle Jack. And I went to Cooper for 6 months and ended up staying there 14 years, and then recently went back for another 2 years. That's it, no more. Went from nursing to being asked to set up the Aboriginal aged care in Cooper. At that time, my first research turned up 113 old people, most of them living under trees in backyards with dogs and in dreadful, dreadful circumstances. So we first of all got funding for a HACK program, and then later on got funding for the aged care facility that's now running and operating in Cooper. One of my original trainees is the manager of it now, Sonia Mazzoni, and she's, Jack and I sat in creek beds and in backyards and all over the place talking to the old people to really understand what they wanted and what they needed with their aged care. So it was built very much to their specifications. So we sat down and asked them what they wanted, and they said they wanted to camp out of town where they could get back to culture and away from the drinkers. And it's a long story that I won't go into now, but Jack and I ended up living out there with them for 3 years. And I always say that was my university degree in culture. Because
when I was reading in Queensland, I doing this kind of work, with that men and all done it all that, and I come back to Crombie and I said I'll run into Gwen, and we went to room there, got married, and then at the room there, and anyway, we settled down and done a bit of job in on there for people, all that, and teach them that thing to have a good life and everything. And I said, well, it's trying to tell them about the drinking, the problem they have, and a bit of drinking and all of that. And I said, don't drink beer, good, and this is all of that poison, that stuff, don't ever drink and cause them trouble. And then I settled down and we fathered now, and we went to up and before they got something and all that, and doing a better job and everything like that.
Just Teena from Alice Springs originally. For 26 years off and on, I've been a coach driver with Australian Pacific Tours and been around Australia 8.5 times in my work. The only Aboriginal female coach, captain, driver guide in Australia still, which is sad because there's a lot of people who came to this country to experience and to see Aboriginal people and to get to hear about our culture and everything, and visit significant areas within Australia. So my accolade, I guess, to our culture, and that was to tell them the truth about stolen generations, about how it was growing up for us, to progress from from where we were as kids running around half naked to then being put into homes and to learn to grow up in a different society to what we knew as children.
I think the first the very first ground level thing to know and understand is the diversity amongst Aboriginal people. Too often people get lumped in the same basket as all being the same, which is really devastating if people have only seen the surface of maybe drinkers in the street and think that's what everybody's like. But it even goes much deeper than that. Just off the top of my head, a few things of the diversity. You've got the people that were stolen generation. You've got the people that grew up with Christian backgrounds. You've got the people that grew up with traditional backgrounds. You've got the people from drug and alcohol families. And also the intergenerational influences that have come through. And probably the best way of explaining that is to use a couple of families that I know of and been very close to. One family, which I'm quite comfortable naming, is Jack's family. Jack, having grown up and spent a lot of his time growing up on a station with white people that were very good to him. The sons were his mates and his friends, and the older people treated him like a son. So he grew up with a really good attitude towards white people and feeling very comfortable with them. And he passed that on to his family, so it's gone down through the generations. Whereas another family that I know very well is the other side of the coin. The old grandfather had a white father and an Aboriginal mother. The white father was very cruel and very horrible to him, and he had other bad experiences with white people when he was young, so he passed that on to his family. And they then had quite difficulty, and you could feel it. The minute you met them, you felt the barriers were there, and you know, it wasn't until you got to know them that you found out why. And it was a family I'd become extremely close to, but I had to work very hard, and I had to prove myself over and over again. And that's something else that I found, and I welcomed it. Some people don't, but it was a test being put on you to see if you could be trusted and to see how you really felt, and to look beyond the surface of getting to know you as a person, and to be able to be authentic and connect on people with people at that level is extremely valuable, particularly when you're working and living amongst people.
Well, that's the same for us too, you know, as Aboriginal people, like me going into immigration and border force and you know, driving beautiful big coaches and that, Aboriginal woman, like, you know, and mine trucks, and that was all men's domain, you know. They didn't want an Aboriginal woman unless she could prove herself, and boy, geez, I had to step up there, and I was able to do it. So, but with, you know, as Gwen says, it's really hard, you know, but we gotta respect each other too, because it's now, you know, we gotta face. We still got that little bit of racism out there, and it can go either way. And black fellas too, that if they don't trust you, they're not going to let you in either.
And I guess this big controversial thing at the moment is racial issues because of the different things that are happening. A lot of people that I've spoke to say, you know, I can't understand why this is classed as being racial or something else is being classed as being a racial thing. Once again, it's individual and it's personal. If people have grown up being called something that probably wouldn't worry me in the slightest if I was called it, but for maybe yourself or Uncle Jack, it would be very discriminative because when you were younger, that's how people were perhaps calling you and
well, that word ever,
that.
That's the classic
well, I guess
example right there.
Yeah, what I was thinking of there too was the word coon, as in the coon cheese. And I remember out at our bush camp one day, we had a big group out there, and one of our white aged care staff was taking photos. And she just said, which is quite often said in white communities, instead of saying cheese, they say coon. And that's what she said. Well, I just about sunk into the ground because it hurt me, because I knew, I could tell by the look on the old people's faces, no one said a word, but I could tell it was hurting them. And, this girl did it out of complete ignorance, and when I said to her later what she'd done, she was just devastated that she'd done it because it didn't mean anything to her.
Yeah, I think it's when it does come to decision making, when it comes to whether kids are placed somewhere or kids are moved on. Myself, being placed with an Aboriginal family, that's always got to be key. That's always got to be number one, I think. For me, that's what saved me, I guess. That's what I can always look back and go, oh, if I didn't end up there, where could I have been? And it's always good to teach just white people about how important family is. Especially I run a rehab centre where we have to have 80% Aboriginal clients, and the other 20% can be white people. And we get them in, and it's a bit of a culture shock to them. They get there and they're like, oh, what the heck? And some people have never had interaction with Aboriginal people, and then I think they leave with a sense of family and togetherness, I think, by the time they leave. Just for an instance, you meet a white fella and the first thing he does is he shakes your hand and asks you, what do you do for a job? Which is exactly what happens. First person you meet, ever meet an Aboriginal person, the first person they shake your hand, they ask you who you are.
Where you come from?
Where you come from.
Where you from?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a difference where they will structurally put you where you are when it becomes to occupation, where we do it when it comes to your family. Yeah, okay, well, so we know you from here, we know you from there, or okay, and then they work off that character from who you are. So I think decision making with the children is has to be an Aboriginal family, has to be, and it's tough because there's not many of them.
Like Ray was saying, us to be like Aboriginal family, because I wasn't so lucky. I got put with white people before I got put with any of my family, and I didn't really have a good experience until I got put with my auntie. I got moved around a fair bit with white people and my family, so it wasn't quite easy. It was pretty difficult. So like he said, for us to be our family sort of thing, makes us feel more comfortable and more reassured.
It's whether that family's willing to sit down and learn, I guess, too, which makes it a bit more easier. If you do go, hey guys, we've got a child here, are you able to take some of these cultural awareness lessons or learn a bit about it beforehand? And if they say no, then it sort of makes your decision a bit more easier too. You already know that they're not really committed to learn or invested.
In a lot of the areas that offer support to Aboriginal people is that they've never sat down with an Aboriginal person. They've never been out on the lands to see how the families live. I mean, it's an eye-opener, for God's sakes, to go hunting with them, to learn a bit of culture, to learn how they, they get by day in, day out. And when we had our cross-cultural courses at IAD in Alice Springs, we worked with a lot of the public servants. This is when I'm going back a long time ago. Talk to them, in a happy manner and make them feel that they're going to get the service that they want, or that they require. And so we had a really good success rate with that because we took them out. We made them eat widgerow and whip them a tail and sit around a fire and interact with our elders, with Aboriginal families, and that was the best thing. And they used to come up and say, yeah. And so, this was the best day of my life, because now I understand. Now I can associate a lot better, than they do. And then when they go back to their jobs, yeah, how are you? Come on. They understand why Aboriginal people then will get cross, will go off a lot more, because they're not coming across to them as they should.
I guess what I can say is keep things a bit more simple. A lot of things is not always what we want. It's less is more in some aspects. We just want honesty, straight down the line, direct. We want to know what we're getting or what we're expected to get, and like you said, in a nice manner. A smile.
Smile goes a long way.
It does, yeah. I do it straight away as soon as I walk in. My face changes, I'm happy. I shake everyone's hand. How are you feeling today? Oh, fantastic, great. That makes everybody else feel comfortable in the room. Then people want to talk to you.
I got taught more of my culture, probably, because my nan passed away before she even got to teach me, which was a wish that my mum wanted, but I never got that, and my mum was too sick to be able to teach me anything. So yeah, just like more opportunities for us to learn our culture.
It's right for us, to all of us. It's only the main thing, the problem is out in city. That's the one they got to know, because we live together around in the bush, in town, outside little town, station and everything like that. We know one another, Only the bush in city, they don't know blackfellas. They're the one who always say that, oh, he's a blackfella. But he didn't know it's same heart, same walk and living, the same thing that we eat, same thing, when we're not eating sort of, some rubbish. But the rubbish, they drink that stuff, they go off their head. That's the one they want to, don't want to touch them.
Yeah, they lost a lot of their culture. That's what John was saying. All the city mob, they lost their culture, and that's what he wants to see. He wants to see them, hunting and stop eating that rubbish and drinking grog and whatever, and get back to the land.
She's right with the bush people. Say we all bush people, talk about meat and whatnot. And people what's out in the city, they're the one will say, oh, the black fellas in the town. And we don't say that thing. We have respect with him.
This mob, they don't go for Jilkadala too,
Yeah.
finish. And whereas Jilkadala means business, law. They don't go for, only the mob on the lands. They still go follow that cultural footprint, through the desert and through the country. And whereas suburbia, they don't have it anymore. In the old days, they round up all the men and all the boys and they come back men, you know.
Mm.
They go away with their grandfathers and their uncles. And same with us women too. We used to go and do our learning with our grandmothers, our bush mothers, and that's something that, you know, that you guys didn't have the opportunity to. I nearly lost it, but I was lucky I chased it. We was pushed aside, you know, with progress and you know, building of towns and cities and stuff like that. Blackfellow got pushed out, so it's good to hear that acknowledgement.
Yeah, no, the same. Just to hear it, it's amazing. I love, you know, when guys talk about it. You said it today, and I was like, yeah, that's, you know, it means a lot. Like I said, I teach my kids to do it, so they do it at their school. When it comes to any assembly or sort of any event that's of significance, I teach my kids to do it, so they can. Somebody says, "Oh, anybody want to do it?" They're the first ones to put their hands up. So, no, I think, like you said, we were pushed aside and sort of swept under the rug. To be acknowledged for something is good.
Because it acknowledges that the people from that region, from that area, you know.
It does.
It lets everybody know that yes, they existed on that land, that they lived there, they camped there, they hunted there, you know, and through the generations. And we're not just talking a couple of 100 years, man. We've been on, Aboriginal people have been on this land for thousands. And when you try to put that in perspective, like, that is mind-boggling to think that those people of all these different clans in this country have walked this land, lived no motorcar, you know, walked it and lived it and survived it. And now people are recognising by saying, you know, we acknowledge that you were here, that your people have been here. We acknowledge you, my man, and that's great, because for a time there that nobody wanted to acknowledge us. They wanted to just push us aside, and they just, you know, they say, "Oh, you're after the land," you know. We just wanted to survive. We were caretakers of this land. There was no fences. We knew where we could sit down. We knew where our country was. We knew we couldn't cross over unless we were invited. And our history was such that we respected each other's clan lands, you know. We wasn't just one people. We were all different clans right throughout this land. And we had law. You couldn't just walk through someone else's land, you know, without acknowledging those people. And you had to go and sit down with the old people, and you had to have ceremony and stuff like that. And so that's a form of ceremony, is that acknowledgement, that welcome to country, that acknowledgement of those people, those clans. I can't say that because I'm from Central Australia, but I welcome it. It's great.
Keeping some of the history, to be honest, because I would love to, like, you know, have a day where we can just actually walk in our elders' shoes and see what it was like, sort of thing, just for a day experience, just so all of us young ones can appreciate what we have and what we can do for our future. Because that's really important to me, it's the history, which I don't know much of, sadly, but that's why I want all of the other ones to know. People younger than me even to know.
Why can't we take these kids bush? You know, why can't we have a cultural experience for them? They need to know what it's like to walk, chuck their shoes off and walk on that ground, walk on that land.
when I was doing the aged care in Cooper a woman rang me from Adelaide and said, we're running a homelessness program and we believe you have a bush camp for homeless people. We want you to come down and talk at the conference. And I said, no, they're not homeless people. All our people at the bush camp have perfectly good homes in town. They're living out in the bush to address spiritual homelessness. So I sat down with the old people, as I always did when I had a problem, and said, look, this is what I've been asked to do. How do I do it? Now, they were talking about Cooper country, and they said, well, country's our mother. It's not just something you walk on and kick around and build things on. It's our mother, and we look after it.
It's right to we like talk about culture, and we, you know, we all understand what the culture means. People in town, they don't know nothing. They're the ones who want to talk about, you know, tell them what the culture means, you know, and what do you have respect on the culture. Just gotta listen or talk, you know, all that. We know we can talk to them.
That's what we're trying to change.
Yep.
We're trying to change that now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that it stays alive for generations to come.
They good way, you know.
Yeah.
And people don't know what's going on, you know. They say, oh, what they're talking about. Culture. They don't want to know. But they want to understand properly, you know.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all these young ones too.
We,
Make them understand.
all us, we know, you know. We know the culture. We talk the culture. We go out and mix with them. But them people, other lot, what they're hiding, they're the one who would come out and talk to them.
Good evening. My name is Rita. This is my brother Michael. We are Ngarrindjeri. We are meeting here today on Ngarrindjeri land. We acknowledge the Creator, ancestors, totems and elders, and the continuing spiritual and cultural connection to our lands, waters, sky and spirit world. We ask them to cleanse, to heal, and to give everyone a safe journey travelling through Ngarrindjeri country. We, the traditional owners, welcome you all to Ngarrindjeri land. Song, dance, and ceremony. An effective way to learn the language is through song, due to the repetition. Language has given me a deeper understanding, knowledge, and appreciation of my people, culture, and country. The Ngarrindjeri language is very descriptive. Every animal, fish, bird, and plant each have their own name. There are words that describe different bodies of water, the river, lakes, Coorong and sea. And there are also words for fresh water and salt water. The word Coorong comes from the Ngarrindjeri word Coorong, which means long neck of water. Can you say Coorong?
Coorong.
Very good. Ngarrindjeri is the sandhills of the coast. Can you say Ngarrindjeri? Very good, very good. And one of my favourite words in a language is Yalawa. Can you say Yalawa?
Yalawa.
Very good. And if you listen very carefully, you might actually hear her roaring it's the waves, it's the sea, the ocean. So Yalawa means sea or ocean. The language is embedded within the lands, water, sky, spirit world, and all living things. When I'm walking on country and I'm able to identify native plants, animals, birds in the Ngarrindjeri language, it strengthens my connection to country. It also strengthens my miwi, which is my spiritual core and seat of emotions. We are part of the oldest living culture in the world. Therefore, we have the oldest languages in the world. It is estimated that there were approximately 500 Aboriginal languages. Today, there are less than 250 languages. The Ngarrindjeri language is currently considered as an endangered Aboriginal language. The sound of our language, however, has survived. Our elders have led the way and have been instrumental in the ongoing efforts to maintain the Ngarrindjeri language. It is our cultural responsibility to assist in the maintenance and continuity of our languages and culture. We also have a cultural responsibility to care for country and to respect all living things for the future generations to come. So this dance honours the Ritcharuki, the Williwagta, and my uncle, the late Uncle Tom Trevorrow. He asked me to create a Williwagta dance. And that bird, of all things he could have chosen, I asked him, what dance do you want me to do? And I said, the emu. He said, I said, the kangaroo. He said, what about the willy wagtail? And I'm thinking, how on earth am I going to create a dance for the willy wagtail? But there happened to be one dancing in front of our house one day, and I was watching his mannerisms and behaviour, and I learnt the dance and got those movements from him. And he told me you can always tell what news is coming just by watching the Ritcharuki, the willy wagtail. If he's sitting still, that means bad news is coming. But if he's flicking his wings, fanning his tail, that means good news is coming.
Ranawanan ruwag, nakanan mangaduan bilakarambi. Ranawanan ruwag, nakanan mangaduan bilakarambi. Lakanangan koyala marambi, lakanan yala nalewarambi. Lakanangan koyala marambi, lakanan yala nalewarambi. Wingamenangan ichan, pontaman mangaruan yan moraraman. Wingamenangan ichan, pontaman mangaruan yan moraraman. Lakanangan koyala marambi, lakanan yala nalewarambi. Lakanangan koyala marambi, Lakananyala na lewarambi.
Recently, our Board of Management had a development weekend with our Aboriginal friends and colleagues in Murray Bridge, Meningie and on country in Ngarrindjeri land along the beautiful Coorong. The weekend was amazing and totally overwhelming. On behalf of the board and personally, I want to thank Kathy Rigney, her parents, the Aboriginal elders, leaders, workers and all who welcomed and looked after us so well, for their time, their efforts and their wonderful hospitality. The time together helped us understand the vast history of Aboriginal people and where they find themselves and their culture today. Many Aboriginal people are sadly cut off from their spirituality, their families and their lands. Once proud and successful nations living in stable harmony with all the great Creator had provided, now caught between a past to which they can't return and a future which doesn't fully understand their unique needs nor always consider or adapt well for them, continuously leading to challenges which limit moves toward a more positive future. As a caring organisation founded on Christian principles, this was sobering, necessary and very hard to hear. However, camping out along the Coorong on country, sitting around the campfire, laughing, sharing and yarning, confirmed for me that the more we engage with Aboriginal people and listen and learn and work and plan together, the more positive will be the outcome for us all. More than 30% of the people seeking support through our services identify as Aboriginal. We have made many steps in the right direction to walk together towards a better future, but there is still a long way to go. I hope this will be the first of many opportunities to meet in their place and on their lands and further understand their strong connections to the land, their families, their language and their ways of living. The weekend certainly helped inform the governance of ac.care and will help us guide delivery of services in culturally appropriate ways. It was a great weekend, and again, our sincere thanks.
Minule